Hey there, Mike Robbins here. In this video, I'm going to talk about 4 things that you can do to most effectively navigate change and uncertainty. And look, it's a cliche, but it's true. The only constant in life is change. And there's so much change and uncertainty on so many levels that we're dealing with these days in the world, in our communities, within our families, within our work and our organizations. And as challenging as it can be, there are definitely things that we can do individually and collectively to navigate more effectively through times of change and uncertainty. Now, one of the things that's important to remember about change and what can make it really tricky is that most of us seek and fear change at the same time. As human beings, we love change. We're excited about change, some of us more than others, obviously, but it's exciting and it's part of our, natural desire is to evolve, is to grow, is to change as human beings. And, collectively, we want to change, we want to grow, we want things to continue to improve and be enhanced and get better. I mean, just look at the nature of technology and so many other things. And at the same time, when things change, whether we choose the change or not, it can be scary. We don't know if we're going to like it. We don't know how it's going to impact us. We don't know what's going to happen. Even if it works out great in the process of going through the change, it can be uncomfortable, right? So 4 things we can do. The first thing that we can do is cultivate resilience. Now, resilience is our ability to bounce back, to adapt, to adjust, to pivot, to kind of make our way through things when they're not necessarily ideal, right? Some things that we can do to really cultivate resilience. One thing we can do is to develop and really enhance and embrace a growth mindset. Growth mindset is about looking at everything that comes our way as an opportunity to learn and to grow, and about challenging ourselves to learn new things, to adjust, to pivot, to not shy away from something simply because it's uncomfortable and we've never done it before. Another thing we can do when we're really cultivating resilience is to make sure that we build a strong support system. Friends, family, coworkers, people that we know, and there's so many ways to do that these days, virtually and in person, but really building that support system, being able to reach out and lean on people. It's also important that we practice self-care and that we have realistic goals. We're not setting ourselves up for failure by expecting perfection or expecting to do things that are so outside of the realm. Again, growth mindset is about pushing ourselves beyond our perceived limits in a lot of ways, but there's also an importance that our goals are realistic. All of these things help us cultivate resilience. So that's the first thing we can do. The second thing we can do is to embrace adaptability, meaning being open to new things, new information, adjusting, pivoting, being flexible. Now, look, this is something that I've struggled with at many times throughout my life, is really being flexible, being adaptable. Some of us get very fixated on doing things a certain way or doing things the same way over and over again, for better or for worse. And the challenge can become often when we're good at things or we're used to being good at things, that can make it difficult for us to be adaptable and be flexible, as important as it is. So some things we can do to enhance adaptability. We can stay open to feedback, even seek it out, ask for different pieces of feedback, not to take it as the truth with a capital T, but just listen to other people, other people's perspectives on us, pay attention to what other people do. Notice that other people handle the same situations and the same things that we deal with differently. Stay curious. Curiosity is super important, whether we're talking about adaptability or resilience or any aspects of how we navigate through change. That's important. And then practicing mindfulness, right? Maybe you have a meditation technique, maybe there's something specific that you do, but just being mindful in how we work and how we walk and how we eat and just how we move through the world. All of those things can help us embrace and even cultivate more adaptability. The third thing we can do is really focus on our communication and communicate as effectively as possible. Now, easier said than done, right? Communication is challenging, but in the midst of change, in the midst of uncertainty, a couple things tend to happen. We can either under-communicate or over-communicate. Those of us that kind of shut down and turn within, and not always the best way, will stop reaching out, stop talking, stop sharing. Some of us, myself included, who talk a lot and process things verbally, can end up just blah, 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 like overdoing it, if you will, and just sharing everything and all at once and sort of stressing people out around us. So we don't want to do either of those things, although we got to be mindful. The other thing that's important, again, if you think about it as a parent or as a leader, when there's change and uncertainty happening collectively for a group, people tend to get scared and make stuff up. So it's important to communicate as effectively as you can. I often am giving presentations and doing workshops and speaking to groups of leaders who are leading teams in organizations that are going through reorgs or transitions or acquisitions or, and that's super important in those situations to be able to communicate openly and effectively. But what we want to think about doing is being open, being real, being transparent with how we're feeling, with what's going on, with the key people around us, that support system that I was talking about, the people we live with, the people we work with, the people that we need to communicate with, but also making sure we're letting people know what's actually going on. Another thing that's important is actually listening, actively and empathetically listening to other people around us. We're probably not the only ones dealing with the change, with the uncertainty. And sometimes it can be hard when we're having our own level of stress or challenge, and then we're trying to support other people. But being able to actually step outside of ourselves and engage with other people through active listening is really important. And also showing and expressing empathy for others, letting people know through our words, but also through our presence, that we're actually there for them, that we can relate and empathize with them, that we support them, and give them space to have their experience. One of the things I find when going through a change that's impacting, my marriage or my family or my team, or when I'm working with other teams, is that people start judging each other for how they're going through the change or dealing with the uncertainty. Totally understandable, but often problematic. So what we want to have is empathy for other people. Empathy doesn't mean agreement. Empathy doesn't mean I'm feeling exactly the way you're feeling, or I'm relating to this the same way you're relating to this. It means we give people the space and the grace to have their experience, whatever it may be, right? One of my favorite sayings is, in the history of calming down, no one has ever calmed down by being told to calm down. So we're not trying to calm people down or cheer people up necessarily. We're trying to communicate what's real for us, listen to what's real for other people, and do that empathetically. And then the fourth thing that we can do that's really important and kind of related to some of these other things I've been talking about is to focus on our own self-care and well-being, right? Another cliche or metaphor that people often use is we got to put our own oxygen mask on first. It's true. I know people say it all the time, much easier said than done, but really focus on our own self-care, our own well-being. Take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally. What do we need? I mean, again, simple things like hydration and sleep and nutrition that can go out the window when things get really stressful, right? But even more deeply than that, again, back to the mindfulness. Am I remembering to practice my mindfulness techniques? I've been meditating for almost 30 years now, and I find sometimes when things get the most stressful is when I need the meditation the most, is when I often somehow justify it in my mind, like I don't have time, or I can't do it, or it's harder for me to meditate in those times because it's harder to quiet my mind. But those are the times that it's really important. It's also important that we stay connected with people and simultaneously set boundaries. Again, taking care of ourselves, managing our own energy, our own well-being, our own self-care sometimes means we have to say no to people or have boundaries, but it also might mean that we reach out to people to request the support that we really not only want, but we deserve. So those four things: cultivate resilience, embrace adaptability, communicate effectively, or at least as effectively as possible, and focus on your own self-care and well-being. And also reminding other people to do this because, again, often we're not the only ones going through the change. So I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching this video. Feel free to share it with anyone you think might benefit from it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more videos in the future. See you again soon.